Remember Henry VIII, the strapping, 6'2" Adonis, dancing in the tilt-yard? 40 years later, that same man, now a 400-pound tyrant, couldn't climb 3 stairs, his leg weeping pus onto marble. It's a grotesque transformation, isn't it? From golden prince to living nightmare, his body so putrid courtiers claimed Whitehall reeked long after he passed. How did Europe's golden boy end up rotting alive, screaming at ghosts, while his court bet on his final breath? Stick around. We're diving into the most claustrophobic, infection-soaked, paranoia-choked days in Tudor history. January 1547. Outside, the Thames is frozen. Inside Whitehall, the air hangs warm, sour, heavy with infected flesh. The king hasn't walked unaided in months. A strapped chair hauls his bulk from bed to privy, then to his chair of state. That old jousting wound on his left calf, opened 20 years prior when a horse fell on him, never closed. Now, it's a festering crater. Physician William Butts packs it every 4 hours with barley-soaked lint. They say when peeled away, the stench makes gentlemen of the bedchamber gag into their velvet sleeves. Henry's balloon passed 28 stone. His waist measures 54 inches. Each movement grinds bone against ulcer. Yet he refuses a wheelchair, insisting on standing for dinner. This means being lowered onto a reinforced bench, servants wedging oak blocks under the table so it won't buckle. Chroniclers describe his eyes, once cornflower blue, as blood-threaded slits sunk deep in bloated cheeks. He'd fall asleep between courses, snoring loud enough to rattle silverware, only to snap awake convinced someone whispered about his will. Pain that severe doesn't stay in the leg, it climbs the spine like ivy. Henry's temper, always volcanic, now erupts over nothing. A page buttons his sleeve too tight, a candle sputters, a dog barks. He orders arrests like other men flip coins. Bishop Gardiner, once a favorite, spends a frigid week in the Tower because a letter arrived too late. Norfolk and his son, Surrey, are attainted. Surrey loses his head on Tower Hill just days before the king's death. Proof Henry intends to take enemies with him, even from the grave. At night, he shouts for Jane Seymour, the wife who died in childbirth 9 years earlier. Servants swear they hear him bargaining with her ghost, promising candles, abbeys restored, anything if she'll just take the fire from my leg. By dawn, he's always alone, sweating through linen that must be cut away with shears. Swelling makes fabric stick to skin. While the king rots, the court becomes a vulture's parliament. 2 factions circle: reformers, Edward Seymour, the king's uncle, and Archbishop Cranmer, want Prince Edward raised staunchly Protestant. Conservatives, Bishop Gardiner and Lord Wriothesley, push for Mary and a return to Rome. Both sides know whoever's named Lord Protector in the final will hold the next king's strings. They hover in antechambers, trading rumors. Henry's voice is a whisper. He signed with a stamp, unable to grip a quill, the wounds black to the knee. Every courtier carries a tiny vial of vinegar to sniff against the stench when summoned. Imperial Ambassador Van der Delft writes home. The king's life is measured now in days, perhaps hours, yet he still rages like a lion in the trap. Behind closed doors, bets are laid. Will the king outlive Parliament's current session? Smart money says no. With Butts dead of sweating sickness, medical duty fell to Thomas Wendy and Spanish anatomist Augustine de Augustinus. They tried everything: poultices of honey and rose oil, bleedings filling entire basins, a plaster of pigeon entrails and saffron. Henry's pulse fluttered, his ankles drowned in fluid, his urine, collected in a silver bowl, the color of burnt ale. Modern historians believe the ulcers triggered systemic sepsis, kidneys and liver shutting down. The king's breath carried the sweet acetone reek of renal failure. Yet when Wendy quietly suggested preparing the soul as well as the body, Henry hurled a jeweled crucifix, roaring that treason still carried hanging, drawing, and quartering. No one mentioned death again in his hearing. On January 26, clerks bring final revisions to the succession document. 9 pages spread across a portable desk balanced on the king's blanket. The wax seals alone weigh 2 pounds. Henry can no longer sit upright unaided. With trembling fingers, the king presses his dry seal into the red wax. One stamp for Mary's eligibility, another for Elizabeth's, and a final clause empowering a council of 16, not a single protector. In retrospect, it's a blueprint for civil war, but it buys the dying man one last illusion of control. Once rolled, he sinks back, exhausted, murmuring, "If I had but seen to God's word as I have to my pleasures, he would not have given me over to these ulcers." No one answers. The room is silent, save for the fire's crackle and the wet rasp of breath in his throat. Midnight. A blizzard lashes the rooftops. Henry drifts, mumbling about in Bullen's black eyes, the joust where the lance splintered, baby Elizabeth laughing. Around 2 a.m., he jerks awake screaming, "Monks are under the bed." 2 grooms check with torches, finding only dust. At dawn, his pulse is weak, skin cold and mottled. Yet he fights, clinging to life with the obstinacy that broke Rome and 6 wives. In the antechamber, Seymour and Paget draft emergency orders, armed guards for Edward, messenger horses saddled for every county, Beacon Hill above Windsor ready to light if the king slips before sunset. They know news of Henry's death must outrun gossip, or London could tip into chaos. Friday, January 28th, 2 hours past sunrise. Wind rattles the glass, threatening to crack. Henry's chest rises once, falls, and doesn't rise again. A silence, thicker than velvet, settles, even the fire seems to stop its hiss. In that moment, England's most feared man is just a corpse, swollen face, mouth ageki. 6 yeomen are needed to straighten his limbs for the shroud. They bind his jaw with linen, but his skin already blotches, purple cheeks, green fingertips. By law, the royal corpse must lie in state for 9 days. But first it must be moved. No small feat, carpenters build a new litter with iron braces. The coffin, extra wide, comes from Yorkshire oak, as none in London are broad enough. The smell, they say, seeps through the lead lining within hours. Finding this descent into Tudor carnage gripping? Whack that like button. It tells the algorithm to shove real history in front of more eyeballs. And hey, while the king cools, his legacy heats up. Stick around for bizarre funeral rumors and the succession chaos that follows. The funeral procession leaves Whitehall on February 14th. By then, the coffin had already leaked at Sion Abbey. Historians argue, did the lead split on a pothole, or did decomposition gases blow the lid? Contemporary letters speak of a foul broth dripping onto the road, forcing monks to scatter fresh rushes and herbs. Country folk took it as biblical proof the king's sins curdled even his mortal shell. At Windsor, the coffin was shoved into a makeshift crypt next to Jane Seymour. Workers finished the job in record time. No one wanted to guard that smell overnight. Henry requested a modest tomb, but his half-finished monument, intended as one of Europe's great marble wonders, sits in pieces for centuries. A mute reminder, the king who wanted immortality managed only a stink. So, the prince who rewrote religion for a son leaves 3 heirs, all wearing the crown: Edward the boy evangelist, Mary the Catholic avenger, Elizabeth the shrewd Protestant icon. Each swings the nation like a pendulum, exactly what Henry feared. Meanwhile, the body that terrified Europe becomes a cautionary tale: obesity, infection, and unchecked power composting into one reeking lesson. Power, it turns out, is no shield against biology. It merely guarantees a bigger audience for the collapse. If this story rattled you, drop a comment with which Tudor demise you want next: Mary Queen of Scots, perhaps, or Lady Jane Grey. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you catch every grim chapter. Thanks for listening, and remember, the higher the throne, the harder the fall.